العلم أشراف مطلوب وطالبه لله أكرام من يمشي على قدمه. العلم نور مبين يستضيء به أهل السعادات والجهال في الظلم.
By Abu Bakr Yawm Ridda, by Abu Bakr on the day of the Ridda, where almost 2/3 of the Arabs disbelieved in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in the fitna of Khalq al-Quran, Imam Ahmad rahmatullahi alayhi rahmatan wasi'ah. طيب واجبة على كل مسلم. The first condition is that it is wajib upon every single Muslim. It is wajib upon every single Muslim. ذكر أو أنثى, male or female. It is wajib upon every single Muslim. And as Allah Jalla wa Ala says, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ. خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ. Take from their wealth. From that wealth is the wealth of the believers, and amongst the believers there are male and female. Also the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he sent Mu'adh radiyallahu anhu to Yemen, when the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent Mu'adh to Yemen, he informed him of, or he told him that he is going to إِنَّكَ تَأْتِ قَوْمًا أَهْلَ كِتَابٍ. Verily you are going to a people of Ahl Kitab. فَإِذَا جِئْتَهُمْ فَادْعُوهُمْ إِلَىٰ أَنْ يَشْهَدُوا أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ وَأَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. If, when you go to them, you're going to a people of Ahl Kitab, Nasara, tell them to bear witness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wahdaniyya, to the oneness of Allah Jalla wa Ala, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَإِنْهُمْ أَضَاعُوا لَكَ بِذَلِكَ. If they obey you in that, yani if they accept Islam and they obey your command of commanding them to take the shahadatain of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or accept the shahadatain of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَأَخْبِرْهُمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ فَرَضَ عَلَيْهِمْ 5 صَلَوَاتٍ فِي كُلِّ يَوْمٍ وَاللَّيْلَةٍ. And inform them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made wajib upon them 5 daily prayers. Every night and day. 5 daily prayers. فَإِنْهُمْ أَضَاعُوا لَكَ بِذَلِكَ. And this is the محل الشاهد. فَأَخْبِرْهُمْ أَنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ فَرَضَ عَلَيْهِمْ صَدَقَةً. Tell them and inform them that if they accept the testimony of Shahadatain and the Salah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made wajib upon them, because now they are Muslims, now they are in the fold of Islam, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made wajib upon them as sadaqah. As-sadaqah bima'na as-Zakat, the Zakah which is wajib. تُؤْخَذُ مِنْ أَغْنِيَائِهِمْ وَتُرَدُّ إِلَى فُقَرَائِهِمْ. It is taken from their rich and given to their poor. Taken from their rich and given to their poor, and to the poor Muslims. طيب, where's the محل الشاهد in this hadith? محل الشاهد يعني the point of evidence. فاعلم. لا.
Because he said like for the people of the book, and that's general.
لا. فأخبرهم أن الله فرض عليهم صدقة. And the word صدقة is mentioned now. قد فرض عليهم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made zakah wajib upon them. عليهم ضمير. It goes back to who? The pronoun goes back to who? The Muslims. The pronoun goes back to the Muslims, because now they are Muslims. Yes, they were Ahlul Kitab, like now they are what? Muslims. So it is to be taken from them. It shows that the ruling is general. It shows that the ruling is general. So it is to be taken from Muslims in general. طبعا we're going to see who it is to be taken from, which of these Muslims. Like it is to be taken from the rich Muslims and given to the poor Muslims. طيب. What about when the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, رُفِعَ الْقَلَمُ عَنْ ثَلَاثَةٍ, the pen has been lifted from 3. Al-Majnoon حَتَّى يَفِيقَ, Al-Majnoon, the crazy individual, the insane person, up until they become normal, insane. وَالنَّائِمْ حَتَّى يَسْتَيْقَظ, and the one that is na'im, asleep. وَالصَّبِي حَتَّى يَبْلُغ, and the young person up until they reach al-bulugh, until they reach puberty. Are they not from amongst the Muslims? Is it wajib upon them? لا? رفع القلم, يعني the pen has been lifted. If the pen has been lifted, it means that it is what? It's not wajib upon them. The malaika are not writing, صح? طيب. So it's not wajib upon them. طيب. So if a child, مثلا, if a man dies and he leaves behind one son or one daughter, and the man was a millionaire, and he leaves behind £2 million to this 10-year-old. According to what you've mentioned now, there's no zakat on this £2 million. But is it wajib upon him? Wajib upon the money. It's what? It's wajib upon the money. طيب.
Not old enough, is
I thought you said that if what about the hadith? What are you going to do about this hadith that the pen has been lifted from 3? From them is the crazy, the insane individual and the child. 1 minute you're saying the pen has been lifted, next minute you're saying you have to pay zakat. MashaAllah, MashaAllah. What's your name? Huh? Ahmed, MashaAllah. نعم, there's a difference between أحكام تكليفية and أحكام الوضعية. نعم. In this masala there's a khilaf amongst Ahl al-Ilm. Jumhur Ahl al-Ilm, the majority of scholars say نعم, it is wajib upon the individual, or the crazy individual, the insane individual, and the young child, even though he hasn't reached puberty. It is wajib upon them to pay zakat. Right. The Hanafiya say la, it is not wajib upon them. What is the khilaf? What is the reason for khilaf? A lot of times you will realize that the fuqaha, when they have khilaf, it is not for the sake of khilaf. Oh, let's differ. The Hanafiya said that, let's say this. La. There's a reason, the mensha al khilaf, there's a reason or there's a cause for this khilaf. And the cause is, or the reason is, the outlook that they have on zakat. The outlook they have on zakat. So for those scholars that say, as-Zakah is a ibadah mustaqillah, it is a ibadah which is mustaqil, just mahd ibadah, they say that zakat is not wajib upon the mal or the wealth of the insane individual and the child. Why is that? Because every ibadah needs to have what? Intention. As-salah is not wajib upon them. So they say, as-siyam, fasting, and salah and zakat are just ibadat, mahda. No difference between the zakat and the fasting and as-salah. So for those scholars, they say that zakat only becomes wajib when they reach puberty. طيب. Lakin there are some that say, and they are the majority of scholars that say, it is not just a type of ibadah faqat. It is not just a type of ibadah. Lakin it is an act which there are other rights that are connected to it. They are the rights of Allah and the rights of the ibad. The rights of the servants are connected to this ibadah, which is zakat. So it is not just zakat. It is not zakat, ibadah mahda afwan. So for those individuals, set of scholars, they say that sahih, this individual, it is not wajib upon him as per se, because of his age or because of the fact that he's not sane. Lakin it is wajib upon his wealth. And you mentioned that. It is wajib upon the wealth and not wajib upon the individual. And also, as the sister said, there's a difference between the ahkam which are taklifiyah, the ahkam that are connected to us as individuals, and the ahkam that are put there by the shari'. So that is the reason why they have khilaf in this mas'ala. That is why they have. And then this hadith, rufi' al-qalam, the pen has been lifted. Yes, the pen has been lifted, like in the pen of taklif, of sinning. And the pen of obligations has been lifted. Like in this is not just any obligation, it's an obligation which is connected to other people's rights. Mathalan alan, if you're out with your child, and your 10-year-old child damages someone else's property, do you have to compensate the individual compensate for the items that he destroyed? Would you have to compensate? Why? Okay, you're responsible. طيب, like in this child is رفع القلم عن ثلاثة. The pen has been lifted on three. الصبي. Ahsant. Someone else's property. Someone else's property. So it is not just the wajib which is connected to the individual himself, like in there's other huquq in there. So if a child or a crazy, insane individual damages something, they still have to pay the damages. Likewise, مثلا الآن, if a person who is insane, and they were normal, like they became insane, qadarullah, and they've got a wife and children, they've got a wife and they've got children, and they've got wealth in their account, the nafaqah, or spending upon their family, do we say because he's now majnoon, now he's not sane, then it is not wajib upon him to provide for his family or his children? La, because that is a haqq that is connected to, it is the right of the wife, and the right of the nafaqah is the right of the wife and the right of the children. So na'am, so that masala is that, and that is the reason for the khilaf. There's a kitab, Bidayat al-Mujtahid wa Nihayat al-Muqtasid, Ibn Rushd. Bidayat al-Mujtahid wa Nihayat al-Muqtasid, Ibn Rushd. It's Fiqh Muqarin, talks about all types of madhahib, like it's based on the Maliki Fiqh. Okay, it mentions all the different aqwal. That is a very beneficial book for knowing the reason why the scholars differ in this mas'ala. Knowing the reason why the scholars differ in this mas'ala. So, mathalan, this mas'ala that we have here, Ibn Rushd, he mentions that for those that look at zakah as just the ibadah, mahda, they say zakah isn't wajib upon the sabi, the young child. Why? Because he hasn't reached puberty. Like for those that say it is not a ibadah, mahda, it is not just the ibadah, like there are other huquq connected to it, then they say that it is wajib upon his wealth. طيب. يجب على كل مسلم. How about the kafir? Is zakah wajib upon the wealth of the kafir, the non-Muslim? نعم or لا? لا. It won't be. Huh? If he's living in a Muslim country, then zakah is wajib. طيب. That's a qawl. That's jayid. Okay. If he's living in a Muslim country, he has to pay zakat. صح? طيب. What else? What do you think? مثلا, what do you think? He should have to pay or shouldn't have to pay, or what? And in fiqh is not a subject where it's a 2-hour lecture. You have to shaghil al-mukh. You have to work your brain.
The same way it's wajib for him to become Muslim, it's wajib for him to pay zakat, but you don't pay zakat to the disbeliever.
You don't pay it to the disbeliever. No, we're not talking about the disbeliever being taken zakat. A disbeliever has millions of pounds. Do we tell him you have to pay zakat? It is connected. It is connected to other people's huquq, the masakeen, the fuqara, and so on. طيب. Go on.
That hadith, you said, first make sure they believe in Allah, then Zakah is obligatory.
طيب صحيح جيد جيد. It is not wajib on them يعني. Okay. So the sister says لا, it is not wajib upon them because the hadith says فإذا جئتهم فادعوهم إلى أن يشهدوا أن لا إله إلا الله. If you go to them, tell them to accept Islam. And then the Messenger ﷺ فإنهم أطاعوك لذلك, if they obey you in that, then command them with the salah and the zakah. So it is not wajib upon them. طيب. That's what he's going to say. أحسنت. طيب. None of you read وما منعهم أن تقبل منهم نفقاتهم إلا أنهم كفروا بالله وبرسوله. There is nothing that is preventing the sadaqah to be accepted, the nafaqah to be accepted, except that they have disbelieved in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. طيب. So this verse shows that it won't be accepted from them. This verse shows that it won't be accepted from them. طيب. Lakin, when we were talking about as-salah, what did we say? Is salah wajib upon them?
Yeah. All acts of worship, they're wajib upon them, but because generally speaking is wajib, and they will be questioned about it.
So why didn't you say that before?
I don't look at my hand.
Oh, you had your hand up. عفوا. Ahsant. Fiqh is based upon knowing a principle and applying that principle in all of the abwab of fiqh. All of that. نفس المسألة. مثلا الآن الأخ said, the brother said that it is wajib upon them. No, actually he said all types of ibadah are wajib upon them. صح? دليل وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون. I have not created the ins and jinn except that they worship me. And the jinn and the ins are from the non-Muslims are from insan, mankind. So it is wajib upon them. Like there is something that is preventing their zakah from being accepted, which is that they're not Muslims. Also, يوم القيامة they will be asked ما سلككم في سقر قالوا لم نكن من المصلين ولم نكن نطعم المسكين وكنا نخوض مع الخائضين وكنا نكذب بيوم الدين. And they were ones that used to disbelieve in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So disbelieving in Allah subhanahu, disbelieving in Yawm al-Qiyamah, kufr or Islam? Kufr, sah, is disbelief, to disbelieve in Yawm al-Qiyamah. So even though they've disbelieved in Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that there's the fact that they did not pray, and the fact that they did not pay zakah or sadaqah, they will be questioned and asked about it as well. طيب. So the kafir, it is wajib upon him, in terms of they're being addressed. When Allah says, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةِ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةِ, they are being addressed. Lakin, the khitab is not wajib upon them in terms of it being accepted from them. So it's wajib upon them, lakin it won't be accepted from them. Because they are not fulfilling the condition which, or prerequisite for this ibadah, which is that they have to be Muslims. And that is not hard to understand, to comprehend. For مثلا, الآن, when Salat al-Isha comes in, it is wajib upon the Muslim, sah? طيب, if a Muslim who doesn't have wudu wishes to pray, can he say, I'm a Muslim, therefore Salah will be accepted? La. What do we say to him? Make wudu first, perform wudu, and then pray. Like without wudu, they cannot pray. And if they do pray, their Salah won't be accepted, because they're missing a condition. طيب. So the Shaykh says, وَهِيَ وَاجِبٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ حُرٍ. The next condition is that the person has to be free. So it is not wajib upon the slave. It is not wajib upon the slave, because the slave and everything that he owns belongs to his owner, to his master. The Messenger ﷺ says, مَنِ ابْتَاعَ عَبْدًا فَمَالُهُ لِلَّذِي بَاعَهُ إِلَّا أَن يَشْتَرِدَ الْمُبْتَاعِ. Then the Messenger ﷺ said, if a person sells a abd, a servant, then his wealth, yani the wealth of that servant is for the one that is selling. Except if the one that is buying places a condition. Except if the one that is buying places a condition upon the one that is selling and says, I will buy this servant, like you also have to give me his wealth and everything that he owns. So the wealth of the slave belongs to his master. Therefore, there is no zakat in it. So that's the second condition. The Shaykh says, malaka nisaban. The one that, or the second or the third shart is that he has to have the nisab. He has to have complete ownership, and it has to reach nisab. So you have to have complete ownership of your wealth. مثلا الآن, if a person saves مثلا £10,000 and it's in his bank and he's got access to it, and there is no one else that will argue that it's their wealth, that is called ملك استقراري. يعني ملك استقر هذا المال. ملك استقر أو استقر ماله. So his ownership of this money, there is no one that disputes it, and he's got access to it whenever he wants. So in that mal, then it is wajib upon the nisab, or the wajib upon zakah. So there's two things that we have to understand here. Firstly, the person has to have complete ownership of the wealth, of the money, and also it has to reach the nisab. The nisab is the threshold. The nisab is the threshold. مثلا, for example, with sheep, the threshold or the minimum amount which is zakawi, that you have to pay zakat on, is 40 sheep. That is like the bar line. If a person owns 39 sheep, there is no zakat wajib upon him. Why? Because the bar is what? The threshold is 40. Anything above 40, then he has to pay zakat. Like, even if he owns 39, from 1 to 39, there is no zakat upon him. Mathalan, from gold, we will find that 85 grams is the nisab. If anyone owns less than that, or when it comes to fidda, if 595 grams, if anyone owns less than that, then they won't have to pay zakat. So مثلا, the calculation, it varies from yom to yom. The price of gold, it changes from day to day. Like in مثلا, if we say today, the nisab for zakat, according to fidda, silver, is مثلا £600. If a person owns £610, is zakah wajib upon him or not?
Yes,
Wajib upon him. What if they own £590? La. Why? It's under the nisab. So the nisab, every type of wealth, sheep, camels, cattle, dhahab, fidda, merchandise that a person is selling, there's different nisab for each one. We shall see that in the next chapter. Like, what you need to know now is that from the conditions for zakat to be wajib is that it has to reach the threshold. It has to meet the necessary requirement for zakat to be wajib. طيب. Also, when the Shaykh is saying malaka, he has to have complete ownership. The example of the money that was in your bank, no one's going to dispute you in it. Like in مثلا الآن, someone owes you money. Someone owes you money, and we shall see zakah fi dayn. Fi dayn, we shall see that in the coming chapters. Money that people owe you, do you have to pay zakah or not? Like let's say you've given someone £10,000. A year later, or months later, or a year later, or 2 years later, they deny that you owe them any money. No. I didn't take any money off you. They totally deny it. Inkar. That money is yours, sah? You know you've given him £10,000. Like in this individual is refusing to accept that they owe you money. So that money, even though it's yours, you haven't got complete ownership. You haven't got complete ownership. Therefore, it is not wajib upon you to pay zakat. And we shall see the different types of opinions in there. Also, a person who doesn't deny that he's taken money from you, like, and he says, I'll give it to you when? I'll give it to you, inshallah, next week or next month, or give me a year or so. And you give him you give him a deadline. Every time the deadline comes, they say, I don't have it, I'll give it to you. Give me an extension and so on. So that sort of mal, that dayn, you don't have to pay zakat on. We shall see the tafseel of different opinions of the scholars in the coming chapters. Also mal which is مثلا waqf. Waqf lillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The mal of the masjid, for example. Masjids, they do have donations, sah? The masjid is a certain amount in their account. Is there zakat on that wealth? The wealth of the masjid or anything that is waqf? La. Because it doesn't belong to anyone. The zakah, or whenever someone gives a waqf, it doesn't belong to anyone. Therefore, it can't be considered, or there's no zakat on it, because it doesn't belong to anyone. طيب. Mathalan, what some people do, some families, they have a sunduq, an account, mathalan, and they say, we're going to put, mathalan, for example, £20 a month in this account. Or someone holds on to a certain amount, or someone holds on to the money, and they say, we're going to pay him £20 a month, and we save it for a rainy day, mathalan, a funeral, or a wedding. So they're saving it for a certain occasion, or any occasion. Could be death, could be marriage, could be anything. That man, is there zakat upon it?
Yeah, full ownership.
Huh? Because there's what?
Full ownership.
Full ownership. طيب. Any other opinions? The intention, based on what?
If they do in a way that they can't ever take the money back, then they don't have full ownership of it. So then it's not.
So it's not wajib. No. It doesn't belong to anyone. Mathalan, if they raise 5,000, can anyone say, I have 5,000? Any one of them. The 10 members of this family, they raise £10,000 or £5,000 amongst them. Can any one of them say, I own 5,000? La. So it is not mal for anyone. It doesn't belong to anyone. Also, jam'iyat, charity organizations, they don't have to pay zakah. Why? Because it doesn't belong to anyone. It is not mal that belongs to someone. And that shows the easiness of the Sharia of Islam. Not only has it given a threshold, lakin it hasn't generalized the ahkam of zakah on every type of wealth. Only a certain type of wealth that a person has complete ownership over. Mathalan الآن, someone gives you a gift. Someone gives you a gift. I'm going to write you a check of £20,000. طبعا £20,000 is above the threshold, صح? Lakin he says to you, I'll give it to you, lakin I'll give it to you next month. I'll give it to you next year. That is a hiba. So he hasn't given it to you yet. Lakin, you know it's yours, صح? طيب. That sort of mal, would you have to pay zakat on it or not? Why? You don't have full ownership. Because it is a hiba, he can take it back in a minute. He can take it back when he wants. Therefore the hiba, unless you get hold of it, and you take it, it doesn't become wajib upon you. طيب. So there's a threshold where it has to reach a certain amount. The next condition is that, Abdurrahman, did you have a question on this?
Just on Sandur, so the cases that are Sandur, what if they were saving to buy a house, for example? That money, the 10 people were saving on Sandur to buy a house for a year's time, that
well, it doesn't belong to anyone. Like in مثلا, if they agree and say, مثلا 10 people, they agree and say, each one is going to pay 1,000. That mal that they're paying in there, it's not in terms of, it's not charity. They're actually gaining something out of it. It's a house. It's an investment. So if any one of them says, no, do you know, I'm going to take my money back, I don't want to carry on with this investment, what will they do? They will give him his money back, sah? Therefore that money is as if you're investing. It is as if you're investing. So if it reaches the Nisab, then you'd have to pay Zakah on it. Because it is not it is not for charity. They're investing. طيب. The next condition, the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, وَلَا زَكَاةَ فِي مَالٍ حَتَّى يَحُولَ عَلَيْهِ الْحَوْلِ. And there is no zakah upon the upon money or upon the wealth until a year goes past. Until a year goes past. So this is a mas'ala which there's also ijma' of the Sahaba, that a year must go past for a person's wealth to be wajib. Remind me in a minute, I'll explain that mas'ala. Ta'jeel az-zakah, that is called. So the minimum that a person has to have this wealth for is 1 year. So we mentioned that there's a nisab.